This is Jim Thompson, continuing my series on programming for the Oculus Go and Unity. So I have a version of Unity installed that I want to use. In case you're not aware of it, if you've installed a version of Unity but you didn't install Android, if you click on the three dots on your installs window in the hub, you can add modules and you can select the Android build support. Just make sure everything's selected, and you can continue on. You can install just the build. If you wanted Visual Studio installed, you could install that as well. I don't. So basically everything's already set up for me, so I'm just going to cancel this. And then I'm going to add a new project. So I'm going to Projects. I'm going to click on New. And there's some debate on what file type to use for VR projects right now. They're moving towards having a lightweight render pipeline. They're now calling universal render pipeline in the latest betas. But there are issues that they're still working out on it. So I did have some issues with using it, so I'm sticking to a 3D project for now. And I'm going to set it up in my collaborations folder. We have a separate file server for this. So I'm just going to make a new folder for it. And I'm going to say VR programming in Unity for Go. And I'm going to select that folder. And I'm going to name my project VR for Go. And I'm going to create it. Okay. So it'll take a while for it to build the project. So I'm just going to let it run. And we'll catch up with you after it's finished. Bye for now. Okay, so my project has been created. I'm now looking at setting up the project, so it's going to target an Android device. So I'm going to look at File, Build Settings, and the default setting is PC Max Linux. We don't want that. So I'm selecting Android. I'm going to hit add open scenes right now too. So this would be the scene it would build. I'm going to click on player settings. Okay, so for me, we want to give our project a company name. So I'm just going to name it KCIDM. We'll say VR for Go. I'm going to add to that, I'm going to say for teachers, because I think I have a project with the same name. So product name VR for Go for teachers. Okay. So I'm looking at project settings, looking at the player default icon. Okay, so for the default icon, what I want to do is to insert a little logo that we've used before called Logo 3. So I want to identify our project as being part of our school program, and so we use this logo. So I want to add that into the project. So I'm going to, in the project window, I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to name it Sprites. So basically, I'm going to, any 2D elements I'm going to add into this Sprites folder by default. And it's a PNG, so I just drag and drop it into the Sprites folder. And in the Sprites folder, if I open up, it looks like that. Now I'm using a PNG for this just because I already have it. It's actually better if you have a TIFF file, something that's not compressed. But I'm going to use this one anyway. It does the job. So we now have a default logo for our project. For settings for Android, now for VR, you don't necessarily have to have all of the adaptive logos and everything. set up. I'd like to do it at least for the first slot, just because if I want to do a test build, not targeting VR, but just a test build to test whether my code is working correctly, I can build for a regular Android device without the VR, and it can catch errors that I've missed somehow. So I'm setting that up to a regular Android build. Resolution and presentation, don't really need to change anything in there. We do want it to start full screen. Native aspect ratio, all of these settings. The default is landscape left, which is what we're going to want. Okay, a splash image. I like to use our same little logo again as the splash screen for virtual reality splash image. I'm not using another splash screen, just the virtual reality one, so I'm going to uncheck that. Other settings is important. For building on the go, the VR for Android is not capable of using the Vulkan graphics API, so you need to remove that. I'm not specifying which version ES3 is required. I'm going to leave that. If we were using the lightweight renderer pipeline, we would want to switch this over to a linear space, and we would uncheck multi-threaded rendering. I'm just going to leave it at default because I'm not using the lightweight rendering pipeline. Okay, and so we need to make sure that our package name is the same as our project name. So I've got VR for Go for Teachers. Minimum API level has to be at least 25. Okay, and it will automatically target the highest level that it can use. Okay, I am using the scripting backend mono. There is another choice. You can use IL2 CPP. The reason I'm not is I found just through experience, the IL2 CPP builds take longer to run. And we've basically run out of class time waiting for a build. Whereas we could build mono, and the resulting player tends to be larger, but you can build it in a class. So I'm sticking with mono, just so you know. Try it out. Okay, nothing else that needs to be selected there. Just for example, you wouldn't bother checking Android TV because we can't run VR on Android TV. Okay, so the code settings at the end of it, highly recommend under stack trace, you say full. It helps a lot if you're trying to troubleshoot an error on Oculus Go. If you do a default test with VR turned off, you can run a test on your code and it can help find errors. And if you activate full error reporting, it's going to give you the most results. Okay, publish settings. If we were publishing to a store, we would want to set all of this stuff up. We're not publishing, we're just doing a test run. For Minify release debug, I'm just going to leave those at none. There's an experimental Gradle one. There's a debug experimental. So we could try those out. Not going to do it. XR settings, VR supported. Okay, so we want to build for virtual reality, and then we have to specify that we're building for Oculus. Okay, and when we do that, it's going to download a package, Oculus for Android, and it's going to install that. So it's gone to the package manager and found Oculus for Android, and it's installing that package right now. And there's some setting there that you can play around with, low overhead mode, that sort of thing. We aren't using the Quest, so I'm not checking that. I am still using stereo rendering multipass mode, so If you were not, if you're using a lightweight rendering pipeline, you would have to go single pass. Again, my choice there was because of issues that I've had with building, and because in talking to other people at Unity, it's not quite ready for prime time yet, so I'm leaving that out. Okay, so that's set up, and going to go back to build settings, and having done that, I'm switching over to Android as my build target. I'm going to click on Switch Platform. And again, this can take a little while, so I'm just going to let it do its thing. It'll have to re-import some graphics and all that. Okay, I'm back. So it's done the conversion over to Android. If we look at Run Device, eventually we'll be able to select our particular device on here. I don't have it plugged in right now, so it's not showing. We have a sample scene ready to build. Now what we're missing though, we're missing the Oculus input. So we need to go to the store. So I'm going to go Asset Store. And I'm just going to search Oculus integration. And I have previously downloaded it for other projects, so I'm just going to hit import. Okay, so I'm just a new day. I have got Unity open with my project. I've got just a normal empty scene right now as the main camera and directional light. Basically what I want to do now is I want to create a really simple scene, and under the Oculus OVR build, I want to do a quick build APK and run just to check that everything's working. So I'm going to remove the main camera, and from Oculus VR prefabs, I want to get OVR camera rig. Fast way to find it is just search OVR camera, and there it is. So I'm going to drag one of those into the scene, and I'm just going to go game object 3D object plane just to give us somewhere to be. And the OVR camera rig, I'm going to place its Y at 1.6 to give it kind of a human height within the scene. Inside OVR camera rig, if we open up tracking space under center eye anchor, that's the view camera for the finished scene in VR. I'm going to just send it clear flags to solid color, and I'm going to set that color to a kind of a middle gray, just so that we have some kind of background. The skybox just seems silly. Okay. And then from the VR materials folder, I'm just going to grab a plain material and just put it on there, on that plain object. And in the shader, I'm just going to give it a bit of a color, just so that we've got something to see. And I'm going to bring in a cube. And I'll make a different material. And I'm just using the standard material for now, because these are really simple. And later on I would go in and I would make some kind of more effective material for VR on these things. But for now I'm just going to apply them. Okay, so I have an OVR camera rig. If I hit play, and hold the control key down, I can look around the scene just like I'm in VR, not an exact representation, but pretty close. And so what's happening there is I'm using the OVR headset emulator. So it allows me to kind of do a little quick preview of my scene. Okay, so I know I can see my scene, I know the camera's working, so I'm just going to stop that. And then I want to do a quick OVR build and run. So I need to have my headset plugged in, and it is not right now. So I'm just going to quickly plug in my headset with its Oculus supplied USB cable. And I'm going to go File, Build Settings. And as you can see right now that the Explorer window showed up with the VR headset showing as internal storage. On my headset unit, because I've used this headset before, I've already set it up to have the developer settings turned on, and I've also already given it permission for me to do a development build of my application on this headset. That's something you need to watch out for the first time you do a development. Make sure that you recognize the headset. You need to turn on development tools on your device, whatever you're using to manage the headset, your phone, an iPad, whatever, you have to turn on development tools. And then looking through the headset itself, you have to give permission on the device for Unity to run a debug build on it. Okay, so under player settings, if I look under default device, it's now showing my headset on there. So I can select that. And then on the top menu under Oculus, I'm going to do OVR build. Now it depends what version of Unity you're running. If you're running an older version than this one, which is 2019 2.1.3, it might just show OVR build and run. Newer versions, you'll see OVR build. And what you want to do is build the first app, the full app first. And then later on, if you just want a quick preview of one particular scene, you can do that. But right now we need to do a full build and run. So I'm going to click on that. And I just want you to get some idea of how long this takes, so I'm going to let it run without ending the video. So it has to go through your entire project, has to look at shaders, has to build a resources folder, which is basically making connections to the SDK, NDK, and Java, has to compile all the shaders, which is what it's doing now. And you know, my scene only has a floor and a cube. That's it. But it still goes through your project folder looking for shader variants. So it's not just what's in the hierarchy, it's looking at your project. So you have to be aware of that. So one of the things you don't want to do is load up your project folder with all kinds of assets that you aren't actually using, because it will have to go through all the shader variants for all those objects that you aren't using. So what you want to do is, bring the stuff in, try it out, but if you end up having assets in your project that you aren't using, you want to remove the extra stuff from your project folder before you actually do the build. Okay, and so you can see it takes a while to do compiling shader variants. The actual process of building the app and transferring it onto the device, that's the quickest part of the whole thing. And you'll see that when we get there. Okay, so just a quick mention, again, you have to have Oculus integration installed. You have to have your setup for Android done. The device has to be plugged in, and it should show as your run device when you look in your build settings. Player settings need to be set up properly. I recommend you get a logo in there. Make sure you get all the other settings. Like other seems kind of random, but there's a lot of settings in there that you need to change. Right now it's building Gradle project, so that means it's almost at the end of the process. And we should get a build on the headset in just a minute. Okay. So the reason I'm doing this now is it's nice to do builds throughout the process so that you know things are still working. So I'm taking basically the pretty much simplest scene I can come up with, and I'm doing a build on that. And now I'm running a build to make sure that the build process is going to work properly. And we'll see what happens. Okay, so it's now pushing the APK to device, installing the APK, and the app is now running on the headset. Okay, right at this moment, I'm not going to go look at the app. I'm going to open it up later because I have to go on a field trip in a few minutes. So again, catch you later. So here's a few seconds of this little app just showing it playing in my headset. Not much to it now, so we're just going to seriously get into building and designing on the next video. So bye for now.